Reader's Advisory is a role deep-rooted in a library's history. Reader's Advisory helps readers find the perfect book to read. The librarian helps the reader find books based off their likes and past reads, but also opening their eyes to new and diverse titles and genres. The librarian conducts an interview and can be conducted in person or online in order to find the right book. In the early days of Reader's Advisory, readers were only directed towards books they should be reading. However, today's librarian also takes the reader's personality into consideration. Reader's Advisory can take many shapes and formats, but its goal is similar to the early years, finding the right book. Today's librarian has many resources to pull from in order to create a diverse list of books in print, ebook, or audiobook. Whether using resources like the Novelist Database or through web pages like the American Library Association's many award winners, Reader's Advisory is still trying to get the right book in the right person's hands. But even with all the advances with Reader's Advisory, prior to COVID, face-to-face Reader's Advisory was still happening, very similar to the early days. Prior to the late 1800s, much of the librarian's focus was on protecting the books in their nonfiction collection. At the time, reading for pleasure with books from the public library was very unheard of. However, in 1876, Samuel S. Green's paper suggests patrons ask the librarian to select stories for them. His paper, which was read at the 1876 Conference of Librarians, gives the example of a librarian suggesting what books to read to someone traveling because of illness or to someone who wishes for a list for summer vacation. This idea of advising readers or Reader's Advisory impacted librarians by changing their role from solely of keeper of the books to giver of the best book to read. Librarians continued to work toward giving the best suggestions possible. Public libraries weren't the only type of library involved in Reader's Advisory. In 1911, students were given reading lists of books meant to be read before college. These lists were prepared by different colleges and could vary greatly. In 1913, the National Council of Teachers of English produced their own unified list of recommended books. This unified list was a wide range of books and an early form of Reader's Advisory. Today, the Council still creates recommended reading lists for all grade levels. During the years 1920 to 1926, full-time Reader's Advisory services began at 7 urban public libraries across the United States. These positions were created shortly after the American Library Association's report came out about how Reader's Advisory is a major part of the educational role of librarians. About the same time, the American Library Association teamed up with the Carnegie Corporation and created Reading with a Purpose program that helped promote general reading amongst adults. Bibliographies were created that had lists of books which were recommendations for both fiction and nonfiction. 850,000 of these were sold before the pamphlets were eventually discontinued because they simply could not keep up with the titles, as well as they learned that one list of books did not work for everyone. Shortly afterwards, in 1931, S.R. Raghunathan wrote The 5 Laws of Library Science. Both his second law and third law have Reader's Advisory in thought when they say, every reader his or her book, and every book its reader. These were words that would soon become almost a mantra for librarians striving to find the right book. By 1935, 44 libraries provided Reader's Advisory service, and through 1940, more and more libraries took on the role of Reader's Advisory. Unfortunately, after World War II, the dynamics in the library changed. Most library management decided to condense the role of full-time Reader's Advisory into a broader role for reference as well, which actually meant there was less Reader's Advisory being done, and it soon went out of fashion. Thankfully, in 1984, a new revival occurred when the American Library Association's Adult Reading Roundtable was created. The group helped to promote Reader's Advisory and is still an important resource for Reader's Advisory today. By 1990, more and more conferences were being held regarding Reader's Advisory, as well as the database Novelist was created, and it's still a major tool for librarians today. These resources, plus the internet, help librarians have access to even more ways to help their patrons find the right book. And the resources have only grown from there. Now there are websites that provide diverse lists of books, as well as blogs, newsletters, opportunities like BookMatch, a form-based reader's advisory tool, all to help librarians find every book their reader. There are also extensive book displays, Facebook Live events, book talks on YouTube, and book wheels where you spin the wheel to see what you'll read next, all to help readers find a book that's just for them. Finding the right book for the right person never goes out of style, and new ways to find those books are created all the time. There are even librarians that are finding books for their patrons according to what tattoo they have, like at the Denver Public Library. Patrons send in pictures of their tattoo, and a group of librarians sit down and decide what books would be a good fit. Finding the right book for the right person is still the goal. Because libraries everywhere are embracing their role of reader's advisory more than ever, universities like the University of Southern Mississippi had reader's advisory in their curriculum for library and information science courses. Classes with reader's advisory help prepare future librarians for a skill set needed in the field today. Today's librarian has many tools to help readers find his or her book and hopefully have the reader come back for more and more. Reader's advisory is still impacting readers today just as it did in the early years, one book at a time. Hopefully, with each reader's advisory connection, the reader finds their next great read.